Big time. Welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday, January 9th, 2019 meeting of the CCWD Water District. Okay. I would like to have you rise with me and let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job. Now, Bertha, can you sing the national anthem?
No, I can't.
Oh, okay. All right. Rebecca, would you do the roll, please?
Director Smith?
Here.
Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Ratterman?
Here.
Director Underhill?
Here.
President Thomas?
I am here. Okay, we have public comment here at this time. Members of the public may address the board for any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration, and no action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. And the comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Hello, Carl.
Hello, my name is Carl, or Carlos Stoughton. It is a pleasure to meet the new, I have not actually spoken to him, but Scott Ratterman and Cindy Sakata, who has been very helpful in matters dealing with CCWD lately, and I really appreciate that. I'm here today, besides seeing how the board is working these days, to congratulate Russ Thomas as the new president of the board, and Bertha Underhill. Both these people I have a long association with, and I respect very much. In West Point, where I am originally from, we have a sewage system, sewage lines that go to a overcapacity sewage system, which is wonderful, because that means we can add to it at some time. And the time has come. A lot of sewage, a lot of septic systems in West Point were constructed about 30 years ago during a previous influx of population into that town, and their serviceable life is up. They pretty much are at the point where they need to be replaced. And instead of replacing them, I'd like to see an effort by CCWD to try to expand the lines and also to bring those people onto the sewage system. It's beneficial for CCWD, and that it increases the revenue to work the system that's in existence right now. There are existing lines, but the one on Bald Mountain Road is the one that concerns me the most, as it is a densely populated area, and there may be some access to grant funding for a certain population on that road itself. With that, I'd like to thank you. I will be staying for your entire meeting as a sign of respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay, I would like to go to the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. Items will be placed or acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. And any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion.
Move for acceptance.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Rebecca, would you pull the board? We'll call the roll.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Ratterman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay, going on to the agenda under item number 4A, discussion and action regarding appointment to board committees and election of members to the joint power authorities. All right. Under this item, I was happy to receive people's requests for placement on various members of committees. And I think that I acted in your interest on that. Let me get to where I should be here, though. Okay. Pardon me while I kind of get myself organized here.
So our process on this is we're gonna take them one by one and make nominations, is that what we're expected to do here?
Actually, the first one would be the board committee, which is appointed by the president, and then you would move on to the joint powers authority, where you do nominations one at a time.
Okay, but he's
Okay.
making appointments already.
Okay.
I was just assuming he would announce who's
Yeah.
going to be on each
Okay.
one, and then move on to the
What I've done is, on the committees, the board committees will be the engineering committee, starting with Director Davidson, and I also will be serving on that. On the finance committee, there will be Director Underhill and Cindy Cicada. On the legislative/legal affairs committee, will be Director Davidson and Director Thomas. Okay, and we have chosen to eliminate the cost of service study committee. That was an ad hoc committee that the purpose of that committee was fulfilled with our adoption of our rates recently. Okay, on the joint power authorities, this was presented a little bit differently than I had hoped that it would be. I had suggested that Director Ratterman would fill this position along with the general manager designate. However, if there's someone who would like to also throw in their name in the hat for that position, I guess now's the time to hear from you.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Director Rademan and staff member to be named later, or general manager, however you want to put it.
Second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Rebecca, can you take the roll on that?
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yeah.
Director Radaman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay, the next committee was the Calaveras Amador McCallamy River Authority, CAMRA, and my suggestion for that to fill those positions was Director Ratterman and Director Underhill, with Cindy being the alternate.
I make a motion to have Director Ratterman and Underhill with alternate myself for the camera JPA.
I'll second
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Rebecca, could you take the roll, please?
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
that. Yes.
Director Radaman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay, and then for the, obviously for the CCWD Public Finance Authority, all board members will participate in that. Okay, the Calaveras Public Power Agency, I was suggesting that Peter Martin continue his involvement in representing our organization in that committee.
Do we make a motion on that, or is that, is that necessary? Can we make a motion to appoint a staff member?
It should be just a nomination, and if the criteria for that position includes staff, then that's certainly permissible to do. Just nominate the staff member in that same fashion and call roll in the same way. Yeah.
I would nominate Peter Martin.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could you call the roll, please?
Do we want to designate the alternate at this time too?
I don't think in that, I think we can alternate another, staff member, but the staff member you want to, doesn't work here yet.
Or we could do the same thing that we did on Aqua JPIA, is nominate a staff member to be designated later.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you want to include that in your motion?
Okay.
And-
Okay, I'll second the,
that?
okay.
Okay, now we can take the roll.
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Ratterman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay, the next one is the Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater Authority. That is an effort that I was privileged to be selected for when I came on board, and I'd like to continue with that work if possible.
Make a motion to that effect. Director Thomas continues on Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater Authority.
Second?
And do we need an alternate? Do you have an idea on an alternate?
There's not an alternate.
There is on this form.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Egerton was last year's
Oh, okay.
alternate.
Oh,
Well, Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater
Yeah, this is-
Authority's in my district, so the majority of
That'd be
it
great.
is, so I'd prefer to be the alternate if that's the case, and we can, if it's a technical thing. And the other thing is, maybe we only appointed you, maybe they weren't asking for alternates, we have to look at their formation and see why that was done, but I don't recall it, but.
well, the alternate is, technically there is Walt Ward of Stanislaus County. Isn't that right, Peter?
Yes, that's correct. So the alternate, or the representation is for the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. At this time, when we formed that Groundwater Sustainability Agency and pulled that together, it was decided that we would have one representative from Calaveras County Water District and one representative from Stanislaus County. So, I think basically at this point, you probably just need to select the representative from Calaveras County Water District.
Okay, move to accept Director Thomas.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Ratterman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes.
And do we need to vote on the CCWD Public Financing Authority? It appears that we didn't.
I thought we did.
No,
talk
it's
about
all
that.
No.
board members, that's
That's
It's
all.
all board members.
Okay.
Yeah, I covered that. Okay.
We didn't vote on it.
We didn't vote on it. All right, the Tuolumne Stanislaus Integrated Regional Water Management Joint Powers Authority, also known as T-STAN JPA. I had suggested Director Cicada for that with me as an alternate, but I am willing to listen to alternatives.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Ratterman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay, the next one is the Upper McCollum River Watershed Authority, also known as UMRA. Previously, Director Davidson has been serving on that committee, and I have recommended that he continue. And alternate with Director Ratterman.
Make a
I'm-
motion to accept that.
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Yeah, he just did.
He just did.
Sorry, the second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would you please?
Take all the drama out of
Yeah.
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
it. Yes.
Director Ratterman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Beautiful.
And I'd like to make a motion that we accept the board member committee recommendations as presented by, here as proposed by President Thomas for the Engineering, Finance, Legal, Legislative, Legal Affairs, and Executive Committee.
I don't think you have to vote on that. It's just,
Are we talking about the appointments at this point?
it's just
The appointments.
Those are just appointments. So, a nomination and a vote is not required for the appointment
Okay.
positions.
Okay, great.
So are we through?
We have this other page here about the local and regional organizations and associations of note. How was that presented in the agenda? This is my. Okay, you'll see listed there my recommendations for the Calaveras County Parks and Recreation Commission. I would like to be the representative on that with the alternate of Director Ratterman.
Now, these are not JPAs, right?
No, right.
So doesn't this fall under the recommendation of the chair?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, so are you just asking if everybody's comfortable with it? You're just
And that's,
asking for-
yeah, that,
'cause you can make these appointments.
okay. All right. I make these appointments.
Hereby.
Unless anybody objects.
No objection.
Okay.
Okay, excuse me, can I have some clarification? The Tuolumne Stanislaus Integrated Regional is Director Cicada?
As,
Yeah, but I think this one would be for the west.
No, this
No,
one,
T-Stan is Cicada and Thomas.
okay. And then the
Almaraz, Davidson, and
And-
Ratterman.
Davidson, okay, sorry. Mhm.
any other questions? No? Well, we have that behind us, so should we take a break? Okay. Under item 4B, we have discussion and action regarding the refinancing of a portion of the district's outstanding CalPERS unfunded liability and appointing financial consultants for this effort. Jeff, do you have a report on this?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. This is an ongoing item that we've discussed in detail, and we have received recommendations on ways to finance a portion of the unallocated, the unfunded accrued liability for our CalPERS miscellaneous plan. The next step in the process is to appoint our financing team. A key member of our financing team is Cameron Wiest, and he is here today. He's well-known within this district. He's provided services on a number of financing proposals, whether it's assessment districts or refinancing current debt or issuing new debt. I've asked Cameron to be here today to talk about the process, the next steps, and at the conclusion, we are asking your board to adopt the resolution that is part of this staff report and authorize the entering into agreements between the financing parties. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Cameron.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nice to be here again. Yeah, so a couple of points about the CalPERS. As Mr. Meyer said, it's, I like to call it a UAL. It's a lot easier than unfunded accrued liability every single time. So a couple of points, though, is that the UAL, when you refinance it, it's done under a legal premise, not any particular statute. So it's done under what's called a judgment imposed by law theory. So there is a lot of case precedent and a lot of precedents over the last 80 years for utilizing that theory to refinance judgment obligations. Or another example, if somehow a district were to get to have a legal judgment against them, that's also the theory that's used to incur debt, indebtedness for purposes under those theories. So, so that's the premise of the legal theory that we would be operating under. As far as the debt itself,
Did
I
you
see a question? Yes.
Did you say that that was established over a period of 80 years?
I'm just saying that the legal premise for being able to incur indebtedness has been case precedented over 80 years. And so
Okay.
I just wanted to give the board some comfort that this is not new or something that you would be asked to do that hasn't really been done or tested in the court. So
Okay, thank you.
that was my point. The thing that you might also have noted, I know that you've been in discussions, Mr. Meyer's been taking you through along with your finance committee, and it's, you know, those actuaries will put you absolutely to sleep, but I can tell you that the way that this would be structured is done on a taxable basis. There's no way to incur indebtedness for this type of obligation on a tax-exempt basis. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So the rates that you are looking at are taxable rates as opposed to tax-exempt rates. So As you see the rates, if you agree to move forward today, just keep that in mind, because you might be hearing things in the tax exempt world that are one thing, taxable are completely another. It's about a 33% differential, so a little bit higher to do taxable. However, again, I'm not going to belabor what you've been through already in analyzing this opportunity, but the CalPERS rates are in the 7s, and what you're looking at is probably the 4s, roughly. So you're still looking at everything that you've been exposed to. There is a large differential between the two, but I did want to point out that it is taxable debt. And so with that said, I would also say in the legal documents, again, if you decided to go forward, you're going to be looking at doing this on a parity basis with your existing enterprise fund debt, your water and wastewater debt. So what we would be doing is looking at your existing covenants in those documents that the boards in the past have already approved and adopted to refinance your debt or incur new debt. We have to analyze those covenants to make sure that this debt is on equal parity. Even though they're taxable and your existing debt's tax exempt, we still have to follow all the legal provisions in those existing documents. So if you decide to move forward, there would be a couple of agreements, lengthy agreements, that would make sure that we mirror those covenants and that we're adhere to those, so that you have in the future the ability to issue ongoing indebtedness that's also in compliance. It's very important for a district of this size to have that flexibility to incur indebtedness in the future. What you're doing here is taking from your maintenance, you're taking from your kind of ongoing expenses that you pay to CalPERS, and when you refinance it, you're going to be moving it below the line. So in your existing indebtedness, to do parity, you have your total revenues of the district, and you net out what's called M&O. From a legal perspective, it's just everything, including CalPERS, and you get to this bottom line that's called net revenues. And that has to cover your existing indebtedness by 120%. So when we do this, we're really, if you can imagine it, we're taking out of the maintenance and operation line and we're moving down to the net revenue line, which is just an offset against each other. It really doesn't, it's going to pretty much offset one another, but I just wanted to note again to the board that when these legal documents are drafted, that's what you're going to be looking at, and we're going to make sure that all those legal covenants are adhered to, like I said. So this resolution before you really is to appoint the team. The team that's proposed is a team that is necessary to incur indebtedness in the bond markets. It's a financial advisor under the new SEC rules and regulations. They now go by the name municipal advisors. It's a legal designation now. There's a national test that needs to be done and passed to be a registered municipal advisor with the SEC. You also need a placement agent. That is a firm that substitutes out for an investment banking firm if you were to go to a public offering, for example. This is not being proposed as a public offering, but rather another private placement with a bank, a national bank or an international bank that is going to bid for your business to get this. And these placement agents, what they do and specialize in is knowing the universe of banks that are aggressive in this sector. So what they're going to do, if you move forward, is we would start the legal work, do all the documentation. The financial advisor would do all the credit work and the credit presentation to make sure that everybody understands the financial aspects. And the placement agent then would take a presentation that we would all develop out to the world, all the banks, all the opportunities out there, and let them bid on this indebtedness issue. That, as you can well imagine, is the best way to issue bonds or debt, because you are driving your interest rates as low as possible. That's the goal. 1/10 of a basis point in the size of transaction that this might be, $5–7 million, means a lot. So the team does that for you. That's who you're hiring, is the full team to be able to get that done, working comprehensively with staff, and then bringing the board all the work product that we're going to be generating at a future meeting for your consideration. So I think that if there's any questions, I know that it's a little bit daunting sometimes, like I say, with this type of stuff, but I will always be available through staff to answer any questions. But I think the action that's being asked of the board is really just one of preliminary intention to proceed. looking more deeply, bringing documents back and engaging consultants to go to work for you.
And if I may just follow up for just briefly, the financing team Cameron was talking about was NHA Advisors. Eric Scriven was here for several presentations. The other one is Hilltop Securities and Todd Smith. We worked with them, this same financing team, on the refinancing of the 2004 debt that we did a number of years ago, and Todd got us 1.58%. We also worked through the same team to do the capital R&R loans. So they're very successful in what they do.
So I have a question on the taxable rates. I don't quite understand that taxable rates versus the non-taxable debt. Can you quickly?
Sure. Yeah, so the reason, step back, one step, tax exemptness obviously is one of the great advantages for municipalities. It is still, hasn't been written out of the codes yet. Federal government threatens to take it away quite often, but we still have it, and it's a wonderful thing. But what it really means is that you can only gain tax exemptness, the advantage as a municipality, if you're financing an improvement that is a public improvement in the eyes of the IRS. Public is the key. So when you have any kind of private aspects, and they can be nuanced. IRS is really funny about their laws, and this is why you can imagine that in a pension obligation bond issue, you're saying to yourself, well, this is public. This is certainly public. We're all public servants. This is pension to pay our public servants, and so on. And you're right. The issue comes into play where the private aspect is in pension deals is that CalPERS has been investing your money in investments that do not qualify in the IRS's mind to be able to be refinanced on a tax-exempt basis. They are able to put their investments out internationally, and you never know where your money's being invested. It can be invested in you can't even imagine the kinds of things that CalPERS can do with that money. So that is really the issue with this indebtedness, because IRS follows the bouncing ball. They follow where the proceeds of the obligation have been and where they're going. And because they were with CalPERS, the refinancing must be taxable.
So it would be, the loan proceeds would be an income that's taxed? Is that what I hear you saying?
That's correct. So the interest rate, if you were to do this, the interest rate that you will pay on this indebtedness, so you would take out, let's say $5 million, for example, out from CalPERS and say, CalPERS, we are going to take this away from you, and we're going to invest this ourselves, and we're going to pay for it ourselves. And so what we pay for here is a 4.5% coupon. CalPERS charges you 7 to 7.5%. So you're just taking away from them, and then you're giving it back again to them. So you're refinancing a portion of this debt. I know it's a little bit of a juggling act here, but you're really you're taking debt money from the public, from a bank, and you're handing it back over to CalPERS, but you're only paying that bank 4%, and you're saying, CalPERS, here's your money, and then go ahead and invest it for us and earn your target rate of 7.5%.
Another way to look at it from the investor's point of view, if I was buying these bonds and I knew that it was taxable, I would demand a higher interest rate than a tax exempt, because I know I'm going to get taxed on it by the federal government. And I know these rates are don't pin me down on these rates, but let's say if I was getting a 4% tax exempt rate of return on a municipal bond, to get the same real income that after taxes for me, it would probably be close to maybe 5% taxable. So that's why we have to pay more in interest on taxable bonds. Is that correct?
Yeah,
taxable
that's
loans.
correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You threw out another multiplier there, but whatever the amount of money that you're dealing with here, you're taking it away from CalPERS, going over and getting a loan and giving it back. Did I hear you say correctly that you have to give them back 120% of what you took from them?
No, that was in reference to your net revenue pledge and your existing documents.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with that particular transaction. So the transaction that I just referred to, that you're referring to now, is just simply, you're borrowing 5 million, and you're gonna pay 4.5% for that money. You're gonna take that 5 million, you're gonna put it somewhere. Well, you're gonna give it back to CalPERS and say, now, we don't owe you as much UAL. Our UAL used to be this, and now because we're giving you $5 million, we don't owe you that anymore. So they wipe their books clean, but all I'm saying is they have now a little bit more to invest. And they say they can hit 7.5%. That's their parameter that they're trying to hit on it. But we know sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't hit it. It's really, you don't know. But for purposes of that 120% has nothing to do with that transaction.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I just want to follow up here. I haven't verbalized this before, but it just seems very strange in the world that we live in, that CalPERS was assuming that they were going to make 10%, and they made 4%, and it created this giant problem for all of us and promises were made on the basis of them assuming that they were going to make 10%. And when Jeff and I make a mistake, we eat it, don't we?
I usually blame it on somebody.
Do you? But it really baffles me how when CalPERS and their, all their high-flying consultants and everything, they make such a gross mistake that costs this organization and every other one in the state monstrous amounts of money, that it's just, oh well. Just send us more to make up for our mistake. I'm not expecting you to have an answer for that, but it's just, I'm summarizing it pretty accurately, aren't I?
It's well chronicled as well. I mean,
Okay.
all government agencies are saying the same thing. How can this be? How can we live in this day and age and not have some control over what's happening with our money and there's no better mousetrap at this time, unfortunately, and there is no good answer. You're right. So.
And you referenced 2004, because I know we haven't seen Cameron in quite a while.
That was refinancing the 2004 bonds.
Right.
That we were, so that was done, I believe, in 2013.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
Yeah, the 2013 refinancing that we booked with BBVA, we worked with Cameron, NHA, and Todd Smith at that particular point in time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just to follow up on the 120% number, that I believe was referring to the debt coverage ratio that we need to have. And that was discussed, even our auditors keep track of that in our audited financial statements that we meet.
That's related to other debt. We incurred other debt with the promise that we would
Maintain.
a minimum of 120.
Yes, that's what we still have to maintain. Right now, our debt coverage ratio is a little bit higher than that.
For the debt that we have.
Yes.
Not what we're going to incur.
This we'll still have to do 120, correct?
Right.
Yes.
So we'll get into that now a little bit. So it's again, you have to understand, to get to the net revenues to make the coverage of 120, you have to take your total gross, everything that comes in, and net out the maintenance and operation cost. Well, within maintenance and operation is the pension. So you are paying it and you're still making your coverage. All I'm saying is that to do an indebtedness to refinance some of your UAL, you're going to be switching above the line in your maintenance and operation, and you're going to pull that 5 million down below the line. So it's just an offset in the numbers. It really doesn't, you can actually say that it's less risky for the district, because if you have to pay pension obligation debt, or you're going to have CalPERS, a 1,000-pound gorilla breathing down your neck, and it is above the line. It's in the maintenance and operation aspects. When you take the 5 million and you drop it below the line, you still have a debt obligation you never want to renege and have a demerification mark in the market. Not saying you ever would, but I'm just saying for the record that it is less risky than CalPERS. But I hope that is clearing it up here a little bit.
That makes me feel very comfortable.
I'm sure.
I have, are you aware of any other districts that are doing this, and what kind of an amount, if so, that they are looking at refinancing?
Yeah, I mean, there's many, especially nowadays. I think we had done one of the first of its kind with the city of Arcata about 5 years ago. And then the city of Lakeport, and then a couple of other cities after that. And so chronologically, And then the whole market now is doing it. I mean, now they're actually going out to public offerings to the public markets and refinancing CalPERS debt in the same manner you're considering here. And historically, it's been done, but CalPERS has always kind of bounced back and been reputable in the past. It's just, it seems like since the 2007 recession, whatever you want to crash, they've been just terrible. They're all over. They're up one year 20% and down next year at 1%. And so this budget, it's hard for finance directors and treasurers to budget for that. I mean, because your UAL is bouncing around all over the place. So a lot of issuers are looking at that, and they have done it. There's a history of that. So.
I think we mentioned last time we discussed this, of any of the pending pension reform cases that are at the Supreme Court. Has any of that been resolved, or will that potentially affect what we're doing here?
There has not been any ruling by the state Supreme Court as of this time. They did hear the case.
That's correct.
Is there an expectation of timing?
They did not provide any pending date.
That is correct.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with refinancing a portion of the district's outstanding CalPERS unfunded, or UAL, adopting financial consultants or a team in connection therewith.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Rebecca? Oh, yeah. Public. There's public here. Carl, do you have any comments on this? Vicky?
Can we just get one clarity?
Sure.
The approval of this resolution is just to adopt the team. We're not making a firm commitment at this point to refinance, correct?
That is correct. Once we get the team in place and we go out with the pro formas and get the information out and get bids, we will bring it back to your board, and we cannot accept any bids unless your board authorizes such action.
Okay, no other questions? Go ahead.
Director Sequeira?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Rittman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay. All right, I'd like to move on to item 4C. This is a discussion direction regarding federal legislative strategy. I think we have a conference call that is being set up with our Washington, what do you call it, lobbyist consultant, legislative consultant.
You want to take a quick break while we do that? Or queue it up?
I think they're
Yes.
calling up.
Mr. President, and I will defer to Peter and Joel for this presentation.
All right, I'm going to put you on speakers.
Good afternoon, Mia.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You are shorter than you were the last time I saw you.
Are we ready to go?
Well, I think we want to introduce Mia to our new
Oh, yes.
director.
Yeah.
Mia, we have Cindy Cicada.
Hi, Mia.
Hi,
Nice to
how are
meet
you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk a little bit about my background too, so you'll get a sense of who I am and who my firm is. And if we're ready, I can just kick it off right now.
I think we're gonna have Peter start off the presentation, Mia, if that's okay? Is that what you want to do?
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, Mia, I just brought up your PowerPoint presentation, so, you can just tell me to move along as far as moving through this presentation and going over your plan for today. So, if you want to go ahead and start, I'm on the first slide, so.
Okay. I'm having a little bit of hard time hearing you, but I'll just kick it off and just tell me to stop whenever.
He's got a PowerPoint presentation, your PowerPoint, he just wants you to tell him when to hit the next slide.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's start with the objective page. Are we there?
Yep.
Okay, super, thank you. So, good afternoon again. It is my pleasure to be here. I wish I was closer, but this is going to have to do for today. My name's Mia O'Connell. I am the consultant, federal consultant for CCWD here in Washington. And I am very pleased to be part of the board's legislative workshop today. Today's objective is really to have a presentation to outline and discuss with the board and to get your thoughts, really, on the key federal opportunities and strategies for 2019 that we've identified that we believe are in line with CCWD's priority issues. Need your feedback, need your discussion on that. And I'm hopeful that today's discussion is going to help the board shape its 2019 federal legislative program. So with that, let's go to the next slide. I'm going to keep this brief because I think most of you know about my firm, but let me just give a quick overview. We are a government affairs firm located here in Washington, D.C., really focused on water resources, infrastructure, natural resources activities. We've represented public agencies across the country. Most of the clients that we have today are in California. We've got some in Illinois and Texas. And we've been representing CCWD in Washington, my firm has, since 2015. And before that, I managed the district's federal portfolio at the Carmen Group, the firm I was with before I started my own. Let's go to the next slide, if we could. I'm not going to dwell too much on background because we've got a lot of material to cover, but I do want to say that, I have been representing public agencies in the water space for over 30 years with, I would say, some good successes across the country. We work closely with the California congressional delegation as well as the agencies, federal agencies that are important to the district, particular Interior, Corps of Engineers, EPA, Agriculture, OMB, and others as well. Next slide. In terms of a few of our accomplishments, we worked for a number of years through a number of permutations of the California drought bills and water resources bills, and worked closely with the board and our delegation, in particular, Senator Feinstein's office and Congressman McClintock's office, and were successful in securing key language in the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act of 2016. And that language really, Peter's going to talk a little bit about where we are with that a little bit down the road here, but what it does is directs reclamation to work with water districts like CCWD in the Santa Claus River Basin to look at the opportunities for storage that could be made available through the draft plan of operations to maximize the use of water available at New Melones. Let's go to the next slide. Since that time, since the legislation was passed into law, we've worked closely with the district leadership and reclamation and interior decision makers and our congressional delegation to have reclamation work to include that proposal to store and convey water in New Melones for our regional benefit using our suite of water rights. We also work closely with the Appropriations Committee, Senator Feinstein's office, to make sure that reclamation had the funds to do the study and then have the funds now to do the follow-on work. I want to just take a minute here to say that including the district's proposal in reclamation study was an enormous task. I want to credit Peter did a fantastic job of working with Dave Egerton and our whole team and our district directors and really convincing reclamation of the importance of including our proposal, and that really made all the difference, along with Senator Feinstein's office, telling reclamation it was a good idea. So we were able to kind of work together to do that, and ours, as you'll hear from Peter, was really the only proposal that was included by an outside stakeholder in the Bureau study. So that was pretty incredible. And a lot of attention and support paid to that out here, and I think our delegation felt good about that. We are now working with the district as it works with reclamation. We'll be working on kind of the federal side out here with headquarters and the congressional delegation to make sure that as the study goes forward and it's fleshed out, we stay coordinated so I can brief the delegation what's going on and I can continue to connect with Corps headquarters, with Reclamation headquarters. Over time, I would say that, we've also worked successfully with district staff to secure USDA grants and loans. We've worked on core studies together, and I think importantly, we've been able to establish a presence for CCWD in Washington, on the Hill, and at the federal agencies, so that when the district comes to town, or when I'm going on appointments, at Reclamation, Appropriation Committee, Senator Feinstein, Congressman McClintock's office, the other federal agencies, they know who you are. You have a positive reputation for hard work, innovation, strong service to the community, and that you're, a very positive force for water in California. So we've been able to work closely with you to get that relationship out here. Let's go to the next slide, which really gets to the heart of the matter, which is the proposed federal legislative strategy. Here, I just want to take a minute here to remind the board that we do have a good opportunity to begin to lobby on the issues that we firm up around in Washington, February 26th through 28th, in connection with the Aqua Washington Conference. I'm going to spend more time on that at the end of the presentation, but I just want to put that in your mind right now. We'll come back to it. Let's go to the next slide. This is the first key issue we want to discuss, the district's follow-on efforts with Reclamation regarding the New Malone study. And at this point, what I'd like to do is turn things over to Peter to explain where we are with our proposal with Reclamation, our next steps, and really our proposed outcome. Peter?
Okay, thanks, Mia. And so Mia teed this off really nicely. Essentially, as you're aware, Section 4006 of the WIN Act included basically a study for the Stanislaus Basin, basically doing outreach and including a report to Congress on essentially opportunities for storage in New Malone as long-term. So there was outreach made to many proponents within the basin, and over that time, I worked with Dave Egerton and also Dave Cameron here, our Water Law Council, to sort of frame up a proposal that was pretty much incorporated wholesale into that report. So that report was issued in October, including specific language that we developed, and that was included wholesale into the report. That report went to Congress, and at this point, we kind of need to start to frame up the next steps. It's very light on detail. It's mostly just a concept at this point in that study. So in the meantime, Jeff Meyer and I met twice, once with Mid-Pacific Reclamation staff at the Aqua Conference in San Diego, and then second over at the area office in Folsom within the last couple of months to sort of frame up exactly what they're looking for. And they have asked us to start to pull together a more detailed proposal so they can evaluate it both internally and externally and start to frame up the questions that may come to them when developing this proposal. And that includes a lot more detail on things like water rights, specifically more detail on how we're going to use the water and points of diversion, and also start to think about how this will go through some of the environmental hurdles on both the federal and state side to pursue a eventual project. So,
Peter, has our board seen this report?
So I believe the report was issued in October, and I'm not sure if Dave actually conveyed that to you.
I never got a copy.
Okay, I will make sure that I get that over to you. And you can see the report is essentially separated into multiple sections, essentially proposals, and then they sort of go through some of the background of New Melona's operation, and also in very light detail. It's not a very detailed report. And then also discusses the outreach that they made to other agencies in the region. So,
Okay. I think it's important that if the board, did anybody else get it?
I didn't get it.
okay.
I think it's important that we have that. It's a
Yes.
pretty important document.
Sorry, that's an oversight. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah. So Mia, I guess, I don't know if she can hear me, but I think that's kind of,
Can you hear Peter okay, Mia?
Yes, yes, I can, thank you.
okay, yeah, so essentially, this next slide just shows that essentially we're going to continue to work with Reclamation. We've been engaged with the area office out of Folsom, and we'll continue to do so and to ensure that we start to frame up a proposal that is moving towards a project. And I've talked to Jeff too. We're talking about potentially starting to do some of the outreach locally ahead of time as well. That's going to probably have to set that tone for that as well.
So does that conclude your?
That concludes my
Okay.
portion of this presentation. Yes,
Excuse me.
yeah.
You say outreach locally and,
Well, one of the things we had talked about is that one of the proposals was to help, I don't want to know how much detail I get into this, but one of the proposals has been to help secure a water supply for the air attack base at Columbia. Given that the reason why we kind of were pursuing that is because the air attack base had been told that they were not getting the response that they wanted from the local agencies in the Tuolumne County. It's probably a good time, given that Ed Pattison is now the new general manager, to reestablish that communication and get them caught up to speed on that particular part of the proposal, for one thing. Then also, I think there's some other things we can continue to work on with Sigma and other
Yeah,
things as
but we
well.
probably don't need to discuss them all in public, I wouldn't imagine, so.
Okay.
You're on, Mia.
Okay, thank you. So just to finish up on these next steps, as Peter and the team work on the more detailed proposal with Reclamation, we'll stay coordinated with Peter to understand where we're at and get the updates and timetables and all that kind of good stuff so that I can continue to brief the delegation out here. They're very interested in what's going to happen next. And also, you know, we can stay in touch with Reclamation headquarters out here. It's very interesting and probably not surprising to you guys that when, you know, I set up an appointment for the directors when they come out, or for myself, with headquarters, the first thing they do is call out to the field and find out what the heck is going on our issue. And of course, the field wants to look good, and you know how it goes. So it works well to keep the communication flowing, that headquarters is looking down, headquarters is interested, our members are interested, and so I'm able to make those connections and brief the delegation, and if we need some help, they're in a position then to reach out to Reclamation to, you know, clarify things or help move them along or what have you. So we're in that process, and we'll be in that process for a while. You know, it's a little difficult to talk about a timetable when a significant portion of the federal government is shut down. But the good news is that the Reclamation Department of Interior Reclamation, it's interesting. Reclamation has funding, but the full Department of Interior doesn't. So there's some weird, you know, issues going on with regard to funding. So there's not a whole bunch happening right now, but hopefully in the next several weeks or week, that'll get cleaned up and we'll be able to move on and you know, see some of these other projects move forward. The Corps of Engineers and Bureau of Reclamation's funding bill passed earlier than the full Department of Interior. That got caught up in this whole government shutdown. So it's kind of an interesting twist on what's going on here on funding. Some agencies are funding and are moving along. So we will be working with Peter and the team, and we'll see what the time frame is there. Why don't what we, the overall objective on this, as you probably all know, and it's been in our view the whole time in developing the legislation, drafting the proposal, getting reclamation to include it, and now moving on towards a feasibility study, which is what we want reclamation to do, in anticipation of federal action. And well, for us, the outcome we're looking for here is to, enter into a Warren Act contract. And so all of these steps are leading to that place, and it's taken a while, but we're on it, and the groundwork has been laid nicely, I think. Let's move on to the next slide, if we could. Potential infrastructure legislation. Congress has not been able to get itself together on too many issues. However, one area that looks to be of common purpose is the idea of infrastructure legislation, so that's good news. Both the House and the Senate side have talked about, once we get beyond this government shutdown, one of the areas they want to take up quickly is infrastructure legislation. To me, it feels like maybe the first quarter we're going to see some action on that. The good news is that you guys are prepared for that because you've got your 5-year capital improvement plan, which is fantastic. So our discussions with staff has been, let's have you guys start looking at that range of water and wastewater infrastructure projects on your CIP. Get going to see if we can prioritize that. I'm going to be working with the delegation and the committee staff to understand how they're shaping it and what kind of projects will be eligible and all of that kind of good stuff, so that we'll be in a position to move forward and hopefully include our projects in the legislation. That's our game plan there. Let's move on to the next slide. I think I pretty much covered the next steps here. It's basically doing the homework at home to prioritize your own list, identifying your top priorities, and then working closely with me as I learn how they're going to shape it and what projects will be eligible so we can jump in there. The next slide, if we could move to that, is one that's called partnerships with the county. There's a number of areas that CCWD is interested in that the county is also interested in. So it is nice to have partners as we move forward. Let's move to the next slide and the first partnership idea, which is the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Project. And we've been talking about this for a while. As you recall, this was a program that was needing to be reauthorized, included in the Farm Bill. Well, the Farm Bill did pass, which was amazing. And in both the House and Senate versions, and in the final version, we have a 5-year reauthorization of this program, which is an exciting program. And they also took a moment in time to double the funding for it from $40 million to $80 million annually on a national basis. And this program is about really allowing stakeholders to develop a plan for better forestry and watershed management on a broader landscape basis on Forest Service land. So it's really, the local ideas get to be implemented, which is exciting. So I know that a number of our directors have been excited about this. The good news is it's passed, it's in law. We have to move on to funding. There's $40 million in the Forest Service appropriations bill for this program. So kind of first things first, when you apply for the program, you have to have a plan, obviously. So we're going to have to put together a plan, and let's move to the next slide if we could, because we can kind of get into the detail here a little bit more.
Let me ask one question. In developing a plan, is it going to be much unlike our hazard mitigation plans? It seems like those would be, I hope the county has one, but, I'm pretty sure they have an active one. We have one. What would the plan do except respond to our county's hazard mitigation plans?
Okay, Is your plan focused on Forest Service land?
I don't know that it's focused on it, but
Or
it certainly,
It covers,
I mean, it talks, I mean, to the best of my
Okay.
recollection, maybe Joel can chime in here, and this is Jeff, by the way, but
Yeah.
my thought is it takes, you know, we've got flood issues, we've got slide issues that we've had in the county. I mean,
Right.
we shut down the Stanislaus River at one time with a slide. We had massive slides in the last significant weather, and we've got all these, you know, dead trees that are, you know, in
Yep.
erosion potential with 70,000 acres being burned. I mean, is that something where we can get some focus? Because I know the county has a similar document. It's not the same as ours, but maybe Joel, if he, or whoever from staff would respond.
I think for the purposes of this effort, I think they're going to look more to something like what the Amador Calaveras consensus group put together as far as the Cornerstone project. That I think you got a presentation recently by Pat McGreevy. Those are more focused on forest management initiatives and fuels thinning projects. And so they're looking for those types of planning efforts to be sort of done ahead of time. And a lot of times this thing, when she mentioned that it can't fund planning, that means a lot of the outreach, you know, CEQA, NEPA, whatever's necessary, that all has to be done. So, and very similar to what UMRA has done, I suppose, right, with kind of their projects. So I think it's more of a selecting a project and developing treatments and some planning exercises associated with that.
Well, I would assume we would take it from either one of our hazard mitigation plans. We try to develop a project based on something we've already identified as a hazard.
right, I think there's gonna be elements there. I think one thing to cut through it is I will get you a copy of what the consensus group developed, so we can take a look at that. You know, that it's too soon for Forest Service to have sent out their notice of federal opportunity. However, we need to get ourselves in shape. So it'll be similar, I would say, to what they'll be asking for this time. So let me send what a successful applicant sent in, right? And then you'll have a chance to look at that. And I think you're right, Jeff. I think there will be elements from the hazard mitigation plan if it touches on, you know, better management of the forest. And I hear you when you're talking about dead and dying trees and, you know, better care of the watershed. How are we managing that? What kind of tasks are we doing? You'll see lists of things, and you know, you'll take a look at this, compare it to your hazard mitigation plan. I think you're going to be able to find, you know, some tasks that are going to make sense and fit in. But there may be some other things that we haven't thought about. But the key idea here is that and I think Joel just brought it up, there are other stakeholders who have been, I think, engaged in kind of planning for this sort of effort, a landscape style management effort for land and water. So I think what we want to do is see what our needs are, look at what's been successful, and then, you know, team up with those who are already engaged in developing the plan to see if we can incorporate our things into, you know, what's being developed now.
All right. Okay.
So, note to me that I will be sending you the detail on the application that was approved, so you can see what it consisted of.
All right.
Okay. I'm aware of the time, so I'm trying to move through things. But you know, once we do get an application and put it in, of course, our job out here is to garner support with the delegation and outside stakeholders and do all that kind of stuff. So we'll be giving you a heads up when the funding for this program is made available, and then after that, when the notice of federal opportunity is out there. But in the meantime, you know, I will send that application, you know, that successful one to you. You can start looking at that and seeing what's in your own hazard mitigation plan. You touched on the next issue already. Let's move to the next slide, the hazardous tree removal, which is part of the whole discussion, I would say. I know the county's been engaged with talking to BLM to try to get BLM to clean up, you know, the trees that were on its own property. the hazardous trees that were there and that are falling and that are, a threat to the community, from the Butte fire. And, they have made a connection with BLM. Again, BLM is one of those agencies that are not funded right now, so nothing can happen right now. But in discussions before the shutdown, when they did have funding, we were able to identify a person at BLM, high level, who understands the need here, and I think is very focused on trying to help us. So there is a path, and it seems to make sense. We've got the same kind of issues to partner up with the county on moving forward on that path once there is funding made available. Let's skip through that next steps and move on to Cosgrove Creek, another one of Jeff's legacy projects coming back. I think a few of us were involved in Cosgrove Creek a number of years ago. Let me just backtrack to say, we worked with the Corps after, yet another flood event after Cosgrove Creek to say, hey, Corps, we really need your help. There's a small flood control program that you have, Section 205, that can fund projects up to $10 million on the federal side, and you have to cost share it. And it's a quicker program. You don't have to go to Congress to get it authorized, that kind of thing. So it's more in tune with kind of the local needs. Anyway, we had worked with the Corps to develop more or less a multi-purpose project with flood control at its heart, but also some water storage and recreation and environmental restoration. Well, that went forward, but then stopped at the place where, it was to move into a feasibility study, because at that point the county didn't have the funds to cost share, and because it was flood control, it was their responsibility. Times have changed a little bit. The county is now interested in reopening that. I'm skipping to the next slide on next steps here, but the idea would be to work with the county as it moves forward as a partner, and we can support that effort and push to see if we can get some of these elements that we were so interested in a couple of years ago included in that project. My assumption is that to open it up, the Corps is going to need some funds, so the focus would be on getting them some fiscal year 2020 funds in their work plan.
Was the holdup last time, the county, I believe it was a 75-25 construction share, but you could do in-kind contributions for planning but what happened was the county didn't have the 25% cost share for the initial feasibility, or not? Yes, that was the next step. So we had the base document done, the pre-design, and the Corps was asking the county for funds or in-kind services equivalent to their contribution to do the feasibility study. And at that point, the county said, we would love to do it, but we just don't have the resources right now. So it was put on the shelf. And the counties asked me to see what it would take to take it off the shelf and restart it. And knowing of your interest, I thought it made sense to see if you want to look at this as a partnered project. Just to give the board some background, this
Yep.
Part of this project basically was surrounding the 51 acres that we had initially bought for the spray field that has, significant wetlands, which, there may be opportunities there. There was also the chance for recreation facilities, which is part of the Corps' mandate. And then also, we had the ability to perhaps get some infrastructure to actually spray on part of that property. And so there, there was certainly some interest that we had. Also, the Cosgrove Creek has almost flooded our treatment plant facility down there. And certainly anything we can do to expedite the water travel down there and not have the huge flood event. Cosgrove Creek is also completely inundated the Valley Springs PUD sewer system, I believe in 2006, actually went over the dam of their sewer plant. So there's a lot of reasons environmentally to continue to try to do something with that thing. I remember clearly the county was sent a letter because we were carrying the water on this deal, trying to make a project work for everybody, and the Corps made it clear that it was the county's ultimate responsibility, and soon thereafter, you know, this is right after 2006, the economy went, you know, to hell, and so that's history. But it's exciting to see it come back, and I'm just hopeful that the county actually realizes that at some point, they have to come up with some money.
Right. Yep, that's been discussed. Okay, let's move through those next steps, on to 3D, partnership with the County Corps of Engineers, Section 219. You've got that slide there?
Yep.
And this is the fourth and final area that we've identified for potential partnering. Section 219 is what's known as the Environmental Restoration Authority for the Corps of Engineers, Environmental Infrastructure, and it's basically like, I would say, all those categories of projects that are not in the Corps' main mission. Their main mission, as you know, is flood control, navigation, ecosystem restoration. But for those other things that communities want, such as, you know, water supply, storage, wastewater treatment, distribution, the Congress has said, hey, you know, Corps, we need you to get involved in these areas. So a program was set up, the Section 219, and many years ago, we had identified Calaveras County as a project to be funded up to $3 million on the federal side for wastewater reclamation, recycling, and conjunctive use. Under these kinds of authorities, you don't specifically identify a project, but kind of like a category of projects, and then it's up to the sponsor or sponsors to come up with, you know, a specific proposal for the Corps to look at. So because this authority had been on the books for a while and had not been funded, it had been put on a deauthorization list, but at the last minute, that was taken out by some language. So basically, it's a live authority for us if we're interested in doing something with it. And again, the focus would be wastewater reclamation, recycling, and conjunctive use. In order to keep this authority alive, it does need to have some sort of, you know, pre-construction funding, some, you know, preliminary funding in fiscal year 2020, which is this new fiscal year we'll be entering into, and that Congress will be taking up in the spring. So we'd have to lay some groundwork, I would say, with the Appropriation Committee to move towards some funding in the Corps work plan. And let me just, I'm talking in shorthand, and I'm sorry about that. Let me just, because we don't have the earmarks right now, it used to be that Congress could identify those projects, and that was a good thing. But because earmarks were deemed a bad thing, what they did was they handed the authority over, Congress did, to the agencies, and they get to decide. Well, okay, but we have to help them. You know, like, that's not good enough. They don't, you know, they need a little bit of local intervention. So it's called a work plan that the Corps of Engineers comes up with. And what we do is we lay the groundwork for getting funding in that work plan by starting through the appropriations process with some descriptive language in the committee report, and then having our delegation work with the Corps and myself work with the Corps to get us on that list. So that takes a while, but you know, we thought that this might be an opportunity again for partnering with the county, if you guys choose to, for an authority that's alive and $3 million of, you know, federal funds for something that maybe we would have done on our own. So I kind of incorporated the next steps into that discussion. Why don't we move on to that next slide? It's really laying the groundwork with our delegation, and I can do that if we choose to move forward. I think what we need to do if we're serious about thinking about a priority is thinking about how we'd like to use it, what project we would like to use it on, you know, sitting down with the county and, you know, getting agreement around that, what the project would look like, and then, you know, laying the groundwork with the Corps to see how much funding they would need for first phase of funding, you know, for kind of a feasibility study. you know, a couple $100,000, something like that, that we would work towards to put into the work plan. I'm watching the clock too, because I want to leave time for questions here, but that kind of concludes the legislative priorities piece, but I did tell you that I wanted to issue a reminder, which is really the next slide, where I have the federal lobbying opportunity for the Aqua Conference. In years past, we've had some of our directors and our general manager come out for the Aqua Conference in Washington. This year, it's February 26th through 28th. My mission here is to see if some of you might be coming out for that, and if you are, I think it might make sense to set aside a day or so, so we could lobby our delegation and the agencies on our priorities that we'll be deciding upon. So I wanted to put that opportunity out there because February 26th is going to come up pretty soon, and we need to get some stuff done if we're going to do that.
Let me ask you
Go ahead.
a question on that. I believe we've only gone out to the conference as far as board level recently. As long as we could do both, I think that would be a meaningful thing. But I think the priority for the district has to be to meet with our local delegation and the people that we can influence our agenda with. Is that the best time?
Correct. That's the way I see it too. In my mind, I was thinking that we've had CCWD present here, and it's been mostly the general manager. You're right, but I don't know if it was the last visit or the last two visits. We had a couple of you guys come out. I think your time is best spent in dealing with our delegation and with the federal agencies on our priorities. That's priority number one. I was just thinking, to the extent that you might be coming out for it, I'd like to carve out time to make sure that we take care of our own priorities. That's my view.
Is it? Will our delegation actually have time for us with everybody in town?
That's why I got to start early. Typically, McClintock really does try to carve out some time. So if I got a request in there, I think they would honor that. Typically, the senators are way too busy running around doing stuff, but we get their top staff, which is, for our purposes, just fine. In fact, possibly better, because they're what's doing the work on stuff. We can definitely, get in to see Senator Feinstein's office, Senator Harris's office. No question about that. I'd like to go to the Appropriations Committee, too, because they've been very helpful on making sure that Reclamation had the funds to continue on the new Malona study, and so I want to be able to talk to them to keep them briefed up. I also think, Jeff, that we might want to stop at, if we're interested in core stuff, we should stop at the core. If we're interested in moving forward on the collaborative, I think we should stop in the Forest Service and get the latest and greatest from them and let them know that we're very interested in applying,
Let me just ask a couple more questions. I'm sure the board wants to chime in, but in regards to this, I don't know when our new GM's going to be taken over. What,
Middle of February.
Middle of February?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to have some time with him, and also maybe even find out when the county is planning to go. If they are at all this year. Have you?
No, that's what I was going to suggest also, is that in the last 2 years, this is Scott, I've been on the Legal Affairs Committee the last 2 years, and neither one of our visits to Washington DC were in February with the Aqua Conference.
I believe Dave is gone.
Dave has been very involved with Aqua and has been to those for the last several years. But I agree with Director Davidson that our Legal Affairs Committee this year will be President Thomas and Director Davidson. And I think it's key that our new general manager, who doesn't start until the middle of February, be a part of this. And it may be best that this not happen when the entire Aqua Contingency is in Washington DC trying to do the same thing. And then thirdly, that we send our delegation with the county. I think that's a lot more important than being there in February and being there with Aqua.
Even if they
Yeah,
can't, even if they physically can't go,
on
we
the
want
county
to have their
front,
agenda, you know.
We actually had generally talked about this Aqua thing and having a general game plan of coming out in February. You might recall in our discussions with the county, but it also was not a good time for them.
Okay.
They're gonna be in the middle of budget discussions, I've just found out. So this is fine, I mean, I'm not insisting by any means on you having to come, and now that, you're giving me the timetable on the general manager, it doesn't make sense. It's too early, right? It's too early. You need to, spend some time and, have your general manager, briefed up and ready to go. And, March would be fine. April may be a little late. I'd like to submit some dates to you. I want to look at the congressional schedule a little bit. But we don't, I was flagging it as an opportunity, that's all.
All right, that's fine.
But it makes sense under our FX situation to find a time where our general manager is up to speed and it makes sense, and where the county is prepared to go too. With the change in their CAO, they're still working through that, and they've got a legislative platform, but it hasn't been approved yet by the county. So I don't think they're quite ready, and it would be great, and that was our general plan, to get the county and CCWD together to come out to Washington. I would still like that to happen. It can certainly happen a little bit later in the year.
And the weather would be better later in the year as well.
Yeah.
But, Mia, you're saying already that it's a little late in April?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
I'm a little concerned about that in terms of appropriations, because the process is gonna be in full swing at that point. And I'm also thinking about, I don't know when the collaborative notice of federal opportunity is going to come out. I mean, that's several months from now. I just don't want us to be, late and scrambling. This is all I'm saying. I think for purposes of appropriations, if we're interested in, supporting some funding at the core and this kind of thing, April feels a little bit late in the process. I think March.
So that's what I was going to say.
I think maybe like the first week or two of April, but I think after that it's really kind of late.
Yeah, if we could think maybe in March.
Mia?
Yeah.
This is Director Thomas. If you could just stand by for 1 second. Can I see a kind of everybody is in agreement with this March thing? Forget the.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the general manager
Right.
and the county.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
And if March works for them, then
Well, I will say that the county's priorities and our priorities, I hope they come together at the same time, but, I'm primarily interested in our priorities. If we can support them however we can, I'm happy to do that, but our priorities have to be the most important to us, and hopefully we'll get together on this thing. If not this year, we got 2 new CEOs basically. It may be a struggle this year to come together, but at least they're on the right track, and that's got to be a
well,
good
as
thing.
far as March goes, are you two guys prepared for March?
I'm going to Argentina for 7 days, I think the 7th of March, so any other time.
So is the end of March work for you, Mia, and then we can check with the county and our GM?
Hang on 1 second, I'm looking at the congressional schedule, because it would be nice to make sure. Okay, so Congress is in session the last week of March, the week of the 25th.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
And so that would work. The week before, they're not here, they're out in their district offices. The week of the 11th, they are here. That might be a little early for you, I don't know. But I would say either.
Well, I can take your place, Jeff.
Jeff is in Argentina.
The end of March.
I
I'm only there for a
We
week,
have to
so.
settle this date thing right at this moment.
No, just
I
throw
could
us some
send you
dates, we'll figure it out.
A couple of dates for you to work with.
Yeah,
Please do.
Okay, let's do that, and then you can work with the county on that, and we'll do the best we can with it.
Also,
Okay, super.
also send us your crystal ball prediction about when the government's going to start functioning.
Yes.
that's easy.
It should be getting a little bit cloudier as we go on, and the day gets long here.
Isn't the Aqua conference going to be a kind of a nonsensical activity if the government's still shut down?
Well, it depends on what agency you're dealing with.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
I said, it's just a weird thing, but the Bureau of Reclamation is funded with the Corps of Engineers. Those guys are set.
Okay.
But, you know, many of the other agencies they care about, like Department of Agriculture is not set. The rest of Interior is not set. You know, it's a mess.
Okay, I would just like to add that this is Bertha, and I'm very pleased that you are now representing CCWD in addition to the county. I think that's a great match for us, and
Yeah.
you know, you can look at it from all aspects, Mia, and that's great in order to give us what we need, and we will certainly work as closely as we can with you, and look forward to sending our delegation in March.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bertha. I appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Mia? Okay, Mia, I'm looking forward to seeing you again. It was almost 10 years ago that I was back there, so.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, and I owe you guys a couple of things, some dates, as well as the collaborative application from Cornerstone, so you can take a look at that, and we can start meshing our activities for that.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
we have one other point of business here is we have some members of the public that I would like to give an opportunity to ask you questions if they would like to. So we have Carl? Okay.
On stage. This is Carl Stoughton. Carlos to you. You might not know it, but the president and vice president last year had regular meetings with the board chair and vice chair of Calaveras County. And I'm hoping that maybe there can be some even more symbiotic relation where you have your consultant, your lobbyist in the room at the same time as having some of those meetings. That would be nice. But also, one problem that you've always had, one problem the CCWD has always had with the county is you never had a liaison. You never had somebody that attends your meetings and attends their meetings as well and can provide input in those meetings as to where the county stands on issues to entire boards. And that has always been a problem with CCWD. Right now, tell you the truth, I think you have an opportunity here. Russ Thomas has been a Calaveras County Board supervisor, and Bertha Underhill, as a vice chair, has sat on this board for a very long time.
Not as long as Jeff.
Not as, of course, nobody has served as long as Jeff. But yeah, the liaison position is very much needed. I don't know if this man with the fine fashion sense here can provide that, as he has many other hats he wears. But I would like to see that. And I think that the relationship, because the county handles land use issues, you handle water issues, they're symbiotic. They're almost the same thing, but sometimes having very different ways of approaching similar problems. So that will be something for your consultant, your lobbyist to ponder and see how she can bring you guys together. Thank you very much for this time.
Appreciate your comment.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Whoops. One other thing. Sure.
I was in a meeting with Manuel Lopez, the interim CAO, and we spent an hour going over county issues on Monday, as well as some West Point issues. And he's looking at 3 months at maximum between getting a new CAO. But because of his knowledge, his openness and expertise, I think you can work with him at this time.
Yeah, we're on it. Thank you. Mia, do you have any other questions for us?
No, I think we covered pretty much. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
All right,
Okay.
Mia, thank you.
We'll see you at the
Thanks,
end of
Mia.
March.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that was good. It's nice to have a clear agenda for that. You know, a lot of times it's so unfocused, you can't, can't get anything directed.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I did want to let the board know that now that we've covered federal strategy, we are going to hold a legal affairs committee and get state strategy in order, and depending on the legal affairs committee's recommendation, we can bring that back to the board for a board strategy direction on the state side. But we do have quite a few issues we want to bring to everyone's attention that we want to be working on in Sacramento this year.
when were you proposing to do that?
We'd like to schedule a meeting before the end of this month, so that gives us a relatively short time frame. Maybe we can offline talk to the new members and get that scheduled.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, at this time, I'd like to take a short break before we launch into Damon's report. Let's take about 5-6 minutes, please.
Joel?
Laser doesn't work.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And Damon, are you ready?
I am. Good afternoon, directors, President Thomas. So in your agenda packet is an operations department report. And I realize that this is the first time perhaps that you guys have seen something like this. And so I just want to kind of start off just to let you know that it's my objective to provide a monthly operations department report such as this to you, the directors, to provide you with basically an accounting of work that was done over the previous month from a fairly high level. Then should you have any questions on a particular item, I can do my best to answer that. So from moving forward, the thought is to just take questions by exception.
Let me just give you a critique. A little more explanation would be helpful. Now, I mean, on social media, I heard about the problem, and I actually saw the water on Highway 26. Is that near Silver Rapids?
So that's a different one. So you're looking at the PowerPoint, I believe, but in your packet, I also have a department report, which has kind of a rundown of different repair work efforts that were done by each department. But duly noted on that. So yeah, the Highway 26 water issue, which I'm happy to talk about also, that will show up on the next department report.
Okay. Because that was an issue, because it got so cold, the actual highway was freezing there.
Yep.
And obviously, I'm sure you guys prioritize that. And then the other one, the question I have, some of these, I understand what's going on, but on number 7, is that just a big giant gold nugget that you want to just?
So, well, I'll get to that. I'll get there. So regarding the water across Highway 26, just to kind of fill everybody in, late New Year's Eve, CCWD noticed that there was an inordinate amount of water percolating across Highway 26 on about approximately 100 yards, 300 feet west of Silver Rapids Road intersection of Highway 26. So field staff spent the better part of the afternoon trying to determine where the water was coming from and focused their attention on the north side of the highway. CCWD has a 12-inch water main, which then reduces down to an 8-inch water main with some service lines and a fire hydrant off of it. Literally right next to where the water was percolating. What we were able to determine at that point in time by about 5 p.m. New Year's Eve was that water line nor the service lines on it they were not the source of the issue. So I notified CHP, Caltrans, and we actually notified the local fire departments as well and CAL FIRE just to let them know, because we did have a concern that there could potentially be some freezing the next morning. I actually happened to be on call for the district, and so sure enough, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, we got a call from Caltrans and CHP, and they said, look, it's starting to freeze, we need to address this. So I mobilized some field staff and myself, and we went out and we sanded that portion of the road, and we then incorporated CHP and Caltrans for traffic control while we continued to troubleshoot. Turns out the source of the leak was about 300 feet away, and it was a 2-inch water main that was sheared off at the valve at the connection. It only fed 2 service lines. Incidentally, the water was finding the trench line of an abandoned water main that was at the shoulder of the highway, which terminates right in the middle of the road where this water is percolating. So that's why it was so easily found a great distance away. And so it took our guys quite some time to understand, oh man, this is quite a ways away. So once we shut that down, the water was immediately gone. We were able to get with Caltrans and get the road cleaned up, and everything was back in action.
Do you have all the tools you need to find these water leaks quickly?
So that's a good question.
Two of those copper things.
Yes, right. So
Cameras, that type of stuff? You know.
So a lot of the water lines, especially in the Rancho Calaveras area, are asbestos cement water main, AC water main with a polypropylene service line. And there's a flared fitting into the water main, which is brass, which we could detect with a metal detector. However, leak detection is somewhat tough without a locating wire, which a lot of the older pipes don't have. And because they're asbestos cement or plastic and not metal, leak detection devices have trouble finding that. There is a device that's called a correlator, which we have, which is actually in my office. And I'm working with the Sierra Business Council had a grant through PG&E to train folks on leak detection. And so I'm working with them to see if there's still funds available to bring them down and to reintroduce CCWD into how to use this correlator. It's somewhat, and I've heard this from a lot of operations staff throughout the state, they're hard to understand how to use. They correlate, they listen to the water line, and then they pinpoint and give you a general idea of where the leak may occur, and they're tough. So I'm hoping to bring somebody down in February to help us. So to answer your question, we do, but not comprehensively.
What about signage in the case where it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you guys are out there? What sort of emergency signage did we have, or did we not have anything?
We did have icy signs and caution signs. However, those were Caltrans, and we do have basically caution roadwork ahead signs, but we don't have anything that delineates the work effort. You know, water emergency or line break. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually working on seeing if we can acquire some signs, and this speaks to collections also. So the collections crew is moving forward with smoke testing. So as part of their work effort and preventative maintenance, they have a device which is essentially a fan that drips vegetable oil on the exhaust and blows that smoke into a manhole. And the idea is you plug the other side of the manhole and you fill the sewer line with smoke, and you can see any potential breaks in the line.
You can see it come out of the gutters at La Cantena.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and if you, so that would be, so a photograph of that would be pretty telling. So if we don't have signage out for smoke testing, we can create a lot of problems for the district. So we're actually moving forward through their work effort to, hey, what about emergency signs? What about leak signs and caution? You know, we understand that there's been quite a few conversations from folks in all of the areas regarding service line leaks and how the district goes about repairing those. So definitely. So in the future, if you all have questions regarding any of these items, I'm happy to answer them. Really briefly, just to kind of give you an understanding of what had happened last month. Oh, sorry.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
What is the, it's not chain of command, but if a customer calls, who does a customer call to say, hey, I think I have a water leak? Or I see a water leak on the road, and can you give me an idea of how that gets handled?
So if it's regular business hours, generally customer service will receive that call. A number of things could happen depending on the availability of staff. Generally, a work order will be issued to that field department, and usually it's followed up by a phone call or a call over the two-way radio to the supervisor, And if it's an emergency and if it's immediate, it's all hands on deck. Oftentimes, those phone calls will be then routed to myself, or if I'm not available, plant manager Jesse Hampton will also take those calls, and then we will follow up. And then staff is really good about responding to potential issues. And then we get feedback from them, and then we provide that to customer service or call the customer directly.
Is there a policy that says what the time frame to respond is to any of these calls?
So after hours, the response timeframe is 15 minutes for the on-call operator. So if it was an after-hours issue, customer would call, the call would be routed to the answering service. The answering service would receive the call, collect the information, call the on-call person, and they have 15 minutes to respond to that call. It's actually a page.
Cool.
So you receive a page. If you don't call within 15 minutes, either Jesse or myself will receive a phone call. And then if we don't respond within 15 minutes, then the sheriff's department's call.
Very good. Thank you.
So, really quick.
Damon, if
Yeah.
I could interrupt one, you and I had a brief conversation several weeks ago about signage
Yep.
at specific locations where there are leaks that, you know, what is problematic. Like I was explaining to you, I get a call from a ratepayer, and they say, I've been calling about this for a couple of weeks now. There's water running all over the road, and you're expecting us to conserve water, and you're not conserving water.
Right.
So any progress being made on identifying those, we'll get to this by a certain date, or?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
I'm in the process of, really what we want to do is we want to be able to develop some language for some potential signage, and that's what we're working on now. And then it's important to get buy-in from the distribution field staff that are going to have to be deploying these signs. And so then once we get that information, we can go out and get some cost estimates and then proceed with getting some signs purchased. Which is back to the point of the collections, you know, they helped inform that conversation because we're moving forward with smoke testing ahead for your sewer system, you know.
Damon, your operations department report, this 3-page report, is it for a specific time frame? Or
So-
2 or 3 months?
Yeah, my
or-
apologies. So this is actually for the month of December.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, and I'll have that moving forward. It'll say for the month of January 2019.
So you plan on doing this at the first meeting of
You
each
guys-
month? for
Yep,
the
you guys
preview?
will receive a report monthly just to give you an accounting of the work effort that's done by field staff.
No, very
And so
good.
that provides you guys with a general overview, 30,000-foot level look at some of the work efforts that have gone on relative to water, wastewater treatment, distribution, collections.
So you're right, we never have received one of these before, but they're going forward, that's awesome. I know there's a lot of work going on. I'm amazed that this is 1 month's worth of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, there's quite a bit that staff do.
So this is you, Director of Operations, who's your admin assistant?
This would be Tiffany Burke, who's the admin assistant 2. And then we have Jesse as the plant operations manager. And then we travel through, we have the water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants. So that would be essentially the operators. And then distribution staff for each region or service area. And then we go through to the collection system crew, the construction crew, the electrical department, and the mechanical department.
Very nice.
And so a little show and tell here. So Director Davidson, this leak was on the east side of Highway 20, or of Silver Rapids Road on Highway 26, towards Vista del Lago, and actually.
No, I remember that, down that little way.
Yeah, so that service line leaking is actually this fitting. So as you can see, this would be the piece of metal that's connected into the asbestos cement water main. And so this was actually a repair clamp that was already on the service line. And so the leak that actually caused us problems was right here. So you can see it's really problematic to try to repair or replace this service line because it had a flared fitting here. So what staff planned to do was remove the tap saddle and the service line completely and put a full circle clamp over it and seal it off. However, this is right next to a storm drain. So we did not have the clearance. You can kind of see it on the left-hand side where that black water main is. There's a little piece of metal sticking out. So we actually had to put another tap saddle on and just put a corporation stop, which is essentially a valve off of the water main that feeds the service line. Incidentally, none of the service lines in our service areas have corporation stops. So that's why folks get so many calls about service line leaks, is because we can't shut them off at the water main. We can't, you know, basically dig down to the main and shut the corporation stop and then address the issue on the service line because there is no valve there. So we have
That's
to,
something we were addressing.
so as we replace, we install, right? Yep.
Damon, I observed a truck contractor in a parking lot recently down in the valley that talked about leak detection and water pipe repairs and stuff, and it also had a phrase on it that talked about freezing. So if there's, I never thought about that, but that seems like if you could wrap the pipe with something and really take the temperature down, you could freeze it off.
Yep. Yeah, actually, when I was a treatment operator here in 2005, the mechanical staff actually made use of a freezing apparatus on a discharge line from one of the storage tanks to install a valve, and it worked really well. It can be quite pricey when it's associated with pigging. You put a frozen block of ice in a water main to scrape it and clean it. That's pretty expensive. However, when you don't have a valve in place and you really need to get a job done, it is an option that we can take a look at, for sure. These are another couple pictures of the Highway 26. You can kind of see how the water is spraying.
Ice skate,
Here, and then, but if you look at where we begin to excavate, you see this black service line that's coming out. Well, that was the extension of that whole service line. So it was much, you know, obviously it was much longer prior to the repair.
How old is this particular pipe?
I would estimate it, I would say it's late 60s, early 70s, but I'm not completely sure. These are another couple pictures of work effort that was up in the West Point area off of Matson Lane. What we had here is, the first picture depicts a trench line that our construction crew and distribution staff excavated to reroute a water main around a really large ponderosa pine tree root ball that had essentially snapped the water line. So you can see the black existing water main kind of at the base of the trench, and if you can just follow this trench line around, this is kind of how it would look. And it would go past our Ryan, who's on the construction crew, and continue around and then hang a left right around that ponderosa pine tree there. And then you can see part of the crew hydro excavating that trench line for that reroute of that water main, and then some of the damage done by the leaking main and the service line and a water meter, which all had to be basically put back into place and buttoned up. Here's a couple pictures of service line repairs in the Rancho Calaveras area. This first picture is off of Gabor Street. So this is a service line manifold that feeds 2 meters. As you can see, there were 2 repairs on it previously, and then we had another blowout, which was on this black area. So this is the original polypropylene or tough tube that leads. And so this section was cut out and a new section was installed. And that's what staff's doing in that picture on the left there.
And do we know how, I mean, that's a 3-foot section of pipe with 3 breaks within
Yeah.
3 feet.
Yep, right.
How many
How-
millions?
how-
There are others, they just didn't want to waste any more pipe.
So there's a lot in that statement right there.
Yeah.
There's a heck of a lot going on there. And so if you look at the day-to-day work effort for field staff, particularly in the Rancho Calaveras area, the number of these service line leaks, we don't really have the time allowable to do full-blown service line replacement of every failure. And that's due to the fact that we have so many in-process service line leaks. So if we have, 40 in-process leaks, staff is really focused on, basically, for lack of a better term, stopping the bleeding of the water distribution system rather than effectively, okay, what's the issue here? I see 2 repair clamps on the service line already. Rather than replace a 3-foot section only to put another repair clamp 5 feet away, let's go ahead and grab onto this service line, disconnect it from the main, and just pull a whole new one on through. That takes all day. So while you're spending your whole day doing that, you've potentially have 4 more leaks that just popped up. So, you know, within the administrative staff and with the engineering department, we're actually working towards getting some effective projects out in that neck of the woods to just wholesale replacement of service lines.
Good.
And then we can actually also work to address leaks as they pop up and repair them as they happen. So,
Good to
Director
hear.
Davidson, to your question, the giant rock. So the rock was actually what our staff feel was the source of the leak, because the rock was just sitting right on top of the service line to the left, and right underneath the rock was the leak. So they just say, take a look at this rock, look at this backfill, you know, because, I mean, when they go to replace, it's backfilled to specification with an aggregate base, you know, and not a big old boulder. So that's just the point there. And then here's an interesting one. So this is off of Pueblo Trail, which is off of Kiva Drive in the Copperopolis area. This is in a drainage below a storm drain outlet. We have a sewer line in the drainage. And during that first real heavy rain event we had quite a bit of runoff, and it exposed portions of that sewer line. And you can see on the picture to your right, right behind the sewer line is a little bit of slurry. And so we know that at one point in time, this sewer line was slurried, encased, and over time it has just become exposed. So staff, considering the nature of you know, waterways and fish and wildlife and whatnot, we temporarily repaired or backfilled or covered up the sewer line, and we're going to work through the proper channels to address it this summer when there's no longer potential for runoff through that storm drain. So these are photos of our construction and collections crew sandbagging and then rocking the sewer line so it's no longer threatened. And then finally, just a couple pictures of one of the most recent Reach 1 water main breaks off of Highway 4, and staff. You know, I'm happy to say I'm very impressed with how quickly our distribution crews can deploy a whole group of guys with traffic control onto a water main break on the edge of the highway, and then you know, and then shut down the highway essentially with proper Caltrans control and make the repair in about an hour and a half. That's really impressive. And so we have a great crew up there.
What caused this break? This is a new pipe, isn't it?
So this is.
No, they're replacing it.
Yeah.
Reach
this
1.
is- Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, so this is the one that's on the docket next, yeah.
In design, right? Is that where we're at?
I believe we're gonna be opening bids on the 18th.
Yeah, they're going to be accepting bids later on this month.
And the traffic delay was not very long when I was driving
Oh, you
through
believe
there.
that?
Yeah.
Great, well, that's great to hear, yeah. I mean, very impressive. You guys really get after it. So I just, it was important to show y'all some pictures of some of the work effort and then provide this operations department report. And like I said, in the future, on a monthly basis, you'll have this document. You'll be able to kind of get your mind wrapped around some of the work effort that we have.
Very impressive.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd like to say it's a really good report, and thank you. It's
Thank
very
you.
informative.
I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Damon.
And just to follow up, some of the deficiencies he noted as far as the excessive number of leaks, the proper equipment, which you brought up, Director Cicada, and some of the signage, those are things Damon and I have been working on over the last 2 to 3 weeks to come up with solutions. And we will be coming back to your board, most likely the next board meeting when we have our mid-year budget report, because we are going to have to do some budget adjustments to be able to handle those items. But it's safety first here, making sure we address some of the backlogs and leaks, kind of getting ahead of it, and developing a plan that's basically a two-pronged approach, one with engineering, designing the larger replacement projects that identify service areas where you have multiple leaks and it's easier just to go in and replace those. And then again, addressing the backlog of leaks, which is 40 to 50 in some places, and just knocking those out. So we're going to be coming back in 2 weeks to discuss that plan.
Great, thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Damon.
Okay. Next item is 4E. This is the appointment of District General Manager. I am pleased to tell you that in the length of time that since David Egerton left us and Jeff Meyer took over as interim, that we haven't skipped a beat here. And I want to extend my thanks to Jeff for the excellent work that you've done during that time.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's really.
Good job. Very nice.
Thank you.
We have, as a response, or in response to the applications that we had, we interviewed and have decided that we are going to be hiring Michael Minkler from the Utica Water Power Authority, Water and Power Authority, but I have a signed contract here, signed by Michael. All we have to do, I mean, this is nothing changed in this contract compared to what we discussed to offering him. So I think that it's appropriate that we can talk about this, or I can just simply ask
If
for.
I can just, is there anything special that we need to do regarding this general manager's contract? I mean, I know the discussion had to be in the open, so is there anything that we need to make sure we do or don't do?
At this point, just, so as I understand, excuse me, copies of the unsigned contract are available with the board materials, along with the resolution on the table for the public. Once the document is executed by the board as well, then that will be a public document as well, the signed copy. Otherwise, it's simply discussion of the item, a motion, and a second and a vote on the resolution itself.
Might I make a motion?
Go for it.
I'd like to make the motion. Negotiations have been completed between Michael Minkler and the CCWD, Calaveras County Water District. So my motion is to appoint Michael Minkler as general manager of CCWD.
And to sign the contract. Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Would you please take the roll, please?
Would you please have director comment and
Oh.
public comment?
Yeah, I'd recommend to do a motion for adoption of the resolution. A motion for adoption of the resolution, 2019, whatever the number will be, and the second, public comment, and the vote.
Okay, so do we have director's comments?
I'm absolutely thrilled. I followed, I saw Michael, advance in his career since way up the hill when he was working for the Blue Lake Springs. And so followed him down the hill, and now he comes over to Highway, where are we? 49? So I just, the board has made an excellent decision to hire Michael.
Well, we have discussed this in closed session for a little while now, picking out candidates and doing interviews, and I think the board came to a good conclusion. I'm happy to see, it was a tough decision. We had very good candidates that we went through, and I think it was a very tough decision, very qualified candidates, but I think we're moving forward in a right direction. And again, the district has not missed skipped a beat or missed a step during this process. And I do got to say that I do think that this board moved very quickly and efficiently to do the same thing that took us 6 months the last time we did this. And I'm very, very proud of that.
Any other comments?
I just want to say that, I really want to thank Jeff for his leadership, and we're hopefully still going to have it for quite some time in the future. I also want to thank John Coleman for for making the application of the job. It's no secret that I think highly of John and his expertise. I am certainly going to support Michael in any way that I possibly can. I mean, it's what's in the best interest of this board is to be supportive of our new general manager, and so I look forward to working with him.
Okay, I don't have any comments on this beyond what I've said before, but it's time for the public to weigh in on this if you'd like to comment on this item. Okay, seeing none, then we have a motion and a second. So could you please poll the board? Is that okay? Okay. All right.
Director Cepeda?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Myler?
Yes.
Director Undercutt?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Can I vote twice? Yes. No.
In another year or two.
No.
Okay. Let's go back to the agenda. What a concept. Any old business to discuss? Apparently not. We have a general manager's report.
Yes, Mr. President. As of last meeting, since I coined the phrase brevity, today it's going to have to be anti-brevity, because I missed a few things last meeting that I think are important for your board to catch up on. One of the State Water Resource Control Board has just issued its draft on options for implementation of a statewide low-income water rate assistance program. This is in response to recent legislation. We are looking at it internally. Comments are due by February 1st. It does not appear that they're proposing to have any fees on the individual water bills. They're looking at a millionaire tax and also removing the tax exemption for the sale of bottled water to help fund this. And it's not quite sure how they're going to implement it, where the people are going to get their credits, but it may not be through water districts. It may be through utility bills and/or the CalFresh program. But Joel, Peter, and I have been looking at this, and we'll provide comments by the due date, and we'll keep you posted. Customer Assistance Program, Director Radaman, I don't know if you're going to be able to win your bet. So far, we've got just under 150 applications to date.
In both water and wastewater?
There's a combination where we'll have better numbers towards the end of the beginning next week, and I will be giving pardon me?
150 out of a possibility of 400.
Correct. But
I'm hoping it gets filled up before 400 by the end of the month, but otherwise I get some lunch money.
Notices for acceptance or denial are going to go out later this week, and it's for the first batch that came through. In response to the Orville Dam emergency, State passed Senate Bill 92, and that required the district to create, it had new requirements on dam owners and operators. As a result, we had to submit an emergency action plan and inundation maps for the La Cantena wastewater treatment plant, and more specifically, the effluent storage facilities to both DSOD and Cal OES in December 2018. Peter Martin spearheaded that effort, and now they're under review by the state. So we've met that obligation. Once they're approved, we will have new requirements to exercise emergency action plans and working with local emergency response agencies at least annually to be able to keep them in the loop. And as usual, they're going to be continually updating the plan as state requirements. So that will require an ongoing effort. The SB 88 compliance imposed many new requirements on water right holders, including improvements in the accuracy of measurement and diversions. Peter's talked about this when we talked about the West Point Water Master Plan and the improvements up there. We now have gauging monitors in place in that area on Big Trees Creek above, well, one of them is in White Pines in the Big Trees Creek above Moose Lodge, and in West Point on the Bear Creek diversion. They're up and running. It will require annual maintenance and recalibration, so there will be ongoing costs for that. There's a Finance Committee meeting, which I've mentioned to both Director Cicada and Director Underhill. That's next Tuesday, January 15th at 11 a.m. And some of the future board items that I'll be looking to bring to your board was a mid-year report. Next meeting, we will have the adoption of the West Point Water Master Plan. We'll have, I'm looking to bring an audit policy update, investment policy update, and any other items that we look at in the Finance Committee, and we will be bringing back to you at least through a GM report where we stand on the UAL refinancing. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, we can start with Director Underhill on board reports, please.
Okay. Well, over the weekend, we received over 1.5 feet of snow, so that's good. It was raining starting midnight last night, so that's where we're at in the county, or, you know, driving down the hill. One of the things that I received was an email talking about the formation of a Central Sierra VOAD, and this is these associations help people affected by disasters, and particularly we're talking about fire, which, you know, is a four-season act these days. And so I think that what I'd like to do is have this organization put Joel on our, you know, put Joel on their distribution list so that, you know, we might be aware of what's happening. And as I say, it's the need to help residents with subsequent emergencies, because, as I say, it's going to be another, fires are here to stay, so.
Bertha, what was the acronym?
VOAD, and I wish I could, it's a Central Sierra VOAD, and I volunteer something.
Of disaster.
Had to be a disaster in there somewhere.
But anyway, okay. Pretty calm up the hill, and so looking at Damon's report on, you know, on the operations, Ebbets Pass is in pretty good shape in comparison to other districts, and, you know, thank you.
Funny how a foot of snow will do that.
Just covers
Come springtime, they're gonna be busy. Right now, it's calm.
Oh, and that was another thing I noticed today coming down by Forest Meadows. You're not gonna believe it, Jeff, when you drive up there, all the trees are gone in front of Forest Meadows. It's just amazing. They got a real haircut up there.
Interesting.
Okay.
The VOAD stands for Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters. Did you say that?
Oh, I have one more thing before I turn it over to my other Star Trek person. I had a meeting with Krista Von Latta, who's the deputy CAO at the county, concerning White Pines Park, because there, you know, there's been discussion about the contract that the county has with the White Pines Park. White Pines Park really loves CCWD and would like to enter into a contract with us instead, in order to, you know, not have to go through all the paperwork and everything. And Jeff is saying no. Okay, but anyway, we'll be discussing that. That's it.
I have nothing to report.
Really? Huh. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
I just want to remind you that I won't be at the next meeting. I'll be at the Western Water Summit down in San Diego, so I'll miss the 23rd. But I will be at the finance meeting, and I'm glad to be here.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Happy with your assignments?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. The only thing that I want to report is that I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, and Supervisor Jack Garamendi is the chairman of the board, and Marita Callaway is the vice chair of the board. And so tighten your seatbelts, I guess. So, all in all, it was a good meeting, and I especially appreciated new supervisor Ben Stopper kind of raising his hand constantly, saying, I'll take that assignment, or I'll be the alternate on that. And it really appears like he's going to be jumping in there with both feet.
And then after the meeting, all 5 of them convened at the Mexican restaurant in town.
Is that right? Seriously? What did they talk about?
I don't hope
Were
they
you-
didn't,
you-
they didn't talk about anything.
You weren't invited. Okay, we have the next board meetings. We have January 23rd, and Cindy, as she said, will be out of the area, and then on Wednesday, February the 13th. So, we have to go into closed session now, conference with real property negotiators under Government Code 54956.8, with a property with the APN number of 044-032-012 in San Andreas. Okay, we have district negotiators are Jeff Meyer and Robbie Creamer. We're going to be talking about price and terms, price and other terms. And then an additional item is conference with legal counsel on the existing litigation, Government Code 54956.9, parentheses A, La Contenta Investors Limited versus CCWD in the Superior Court docket number 11CV 37713. Okay, and we'll be back to report if we have anything to report. Public comment on that? There's no public. Should I bring the wine?